pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Cathleen Dinsmore. Cathleen moved to Hopkinton 24 years ago with her husband. She has 3 children and her youngest is about to graduate, fingers crossed.
Yes,
Hopkinton High School this June.
That's important.
You never know until you finally get there.
No, you don't.
Cathleen is an immigration attorney and most recently has been dealing with immigration problems for people from Afghanistan.
Right.
Cathleen is also the president of the Hopkinton Freedom Team, which is based right here in Hopkinton. The Freedom Team, the first Freedom Team was founded in Natick in 2016, and following that and the tragic death of George Floyd, Cathleen formed a Hopkinton Freedom Team in 2020, and this team became a 501c non-for-profit in January of last year, 2022. The aim of the Freedom Team is to promote freedom through unity in the community, and to this end has organised many events in the community, including Hopkinton's very first ever Hopkinton Pride Parade in 2020. They also do a number of training events for the community, and so without any further ado, I would like to invite Cathleen to tell us about the Freedom Team and their work within the community. If everybody would like to welcome Cathleen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annette. It's wonderful to be here, and I really am very honored that you invited me and that you would like to learn more about the Freedom Team. Annette gave a lovely introduction, and so she did not mention that her own daughter Freya was the one who really thought of the first Pride Parade and did, I would say, the bulk of the organizing for the first year and the second year of the Pride Parade. So, Freya is working in Great Britain and Europe right now, and has not been as involved in the Hopkinton Freedom Team. So we miss her deeply. But, it's the young people who are just really energize our group. I know we have high school students on there and different representatives from around the town. So I know some of you are familiar with the Freedom Team. We have one very wonderful member, Judy Weinthaler, who's on our team as well. And the vision of Jamil Adams, who created the idea in the first Natick Freedom Team in 2016, was to provide a group who basically could offer hugs to people who experience any sort of bias. He did it in the wake of the tragedy in Charleston. And he said, there are emergency response teams. He wants a team that is comprised of all different leaders and community members who can just offer the love and the support when something happens, when the emergency vehicles have left or, they need some care and support afterward. And so his vision was like a 10-point community. So he said you absolutely have to have the schools involved and you have to have the police involved. So, and I had heard Jamil talk a couple of years prior to this about his Natick Freedom Team. And I just said that would be awesome in Hopkinton to have, because I know that there are many incidents that happen here in our town to people of color. And as an outsider who did not have inside information, it seemed to me that nothing was being done to address these issues other than a report in the local paper. And so, after George Floyd's murder in May of 2020, I felt like the time is right. And so the first 2 people that I asked were Carol Kavanaugh, superintendent of our schools, and the police chief, Officer Bennett. And they both immediately said yes. And I'm not sure if they understood what they were saying yes to, But, you know, they both have a commitment to social justice and to our community, and work very hard, I think, behind the scenes. And then from there, I just tried to reach the other 10 points of the community. So I asked the director of Hopkinton's Youth and Family Services, Dawn Alcott Miller. She has been a huge supporter of us, and we have sponsored many events together. And then another point is to have a representative of the different houses of worship. And so we have that representative. We have social workers, including Judy, and the schools. We have a school board two school board members, and just other wonderful people, all ages. I think the reason that you want to include everybody is because in order to really affect meaningful and lasting change, you need to include everybody. Otherwise, it's just going to change with the political happenings or different administrations or whatever. So you really want to hear from everybody and have everyone invested in this journey. So I know that many of you are familiar with a lot of the events that we have had, and you know, have been involved with some of our events. What you may not know to be really the original reason for the Freedom Team is to offer a safe and confidential space for anyone who has experienced bias, whether in the past or recently, to meet with 2 or 3 members of the Freedom Team to talk about what happened. It's a way for them to feel heard. It's a way towards healing. And we use a type of transformative justice model so that we're trying to empower the person who was harmed. We're trying to figure out what is it that would help them toward healing or toward resolving this incident. And simply speaking to a few individuals and hearing what happened to them and feeling heard may be what's needed, and then they can move on. With other people, they might still have an unresolved conflict and they would like to have the party who harmed them to be invited to a conversation. And so we will facilitate that conversation. We'll invite that person, and it's all voluntary. So the person who caused the harm can refuse. And then, you know, we will go back to the person who first came to us and just ask them, you know, what they would like to do next. Or it could be a situation where the harm doer agrees to meet, and then we will facilitate that conversation. And I know some of you have taken our active bystander training. We just had one on MLK Day. And we use a lot of that same format in our conversations that we facilitate. We make sure that both sides are heard in a respectful way. And the Hopkinton Freedom Team representatives are a neutral party. So we are just facilitating the conversation and trying to come to whether it's an apology of some sort or a resolution, or maybe there is no resolution. But behind all of this conversation and this space is to try to empower the person who was harmed, so that if it happens again, what can they do? How can they look at the situation a little differently? What resources are out there for them? It's not our job to solve the problem for them, but to help them navigate it perhaps more successfully in the future. So, so that happens, you know, by word of mouth, and people can also contact us through our website, which is hopkintonfreedomteam.org. We have a hotline through the police department, and the police chief is the one who checks messages for that. So, you know, we do want to make sure that everybody in our community knows about this, and it is bias of any kind. So that is, I think, a resource that most of the other freedom teams, and there are about 5 now in the state, that's primarily what they do. For our freedom team, we have been getting involved in organizing and working with other groups to have other activities and events. And so getting back to the lasting change, trying to affect social justice, we have about 30 members on our freedom team right now, and we meet about monthly. And what I've always tried to stress and incorporate in our meetings is not only trying to make our community more aware of the injustices that exist and how we might be able to change that for the good, but it's also examining ourselves and really leaning into different conversations that examine what our own biases are, because we all come to the table with our own biases, our own experiences. And so it's being vulnerable with each other as we learn together, and as with ourselves, with anyone else that we're talking with, really meeting them where they are at, because we're all at different points on the spectrum of how much we know, what are we doing, and it's all good. You know, it's as our mission is to promote unity in the community through love, inclusion, and trust, and that honestly is welcoming everybody. So one of the ways that I am learning more and more about trying to include more people and accept more people, and for the community too, is through storytelling. I think it's such a powerful way to really listen to one's own background and experiences, and to find some sort of commonality, because there always is some common ground. And so I thought you might be interested to hear how I got into this work. One of the ways, I mean, it's been a journey, it's been years, and you know, what I've learned today, what I know now today, is very different from what it was 20 years ago, and I'm sure will be different a week from now. I was taking a seminar, and this woman who is Latina was telling us about how when she was really little, she and her mother were very poor, and they were living in California, and they were picking up cans to get the 5 cents. And they were pushing a grocery cart, and it was full, and they were just finishing up, and they visited this last neighbor's bin. It was the recycle bins. And the neighbor came out yelling at them, pushed over their cart. All of the cans went rolling down the hill. And this young girl had no idea why he did that, why he was yelling at them. And it really, from then on, until she was an adult, she just hated white men. In fact, not just white men, but all white people who looked white. Because she didn't understand why her mother was crying, and this hatred that this man showed to them. And it wasn't until she was an adult and she fell in love with a white woman, and she realized we're all the same. Inside, we are all human. We all have a humanity. And how dangerous it is to put labels on people or to generalize. And that story just touched me in a very deep way. And so, you know, of course, I still find myself making judgments, but I really try to check myself all the time and, you know, try not to make any assumptions whatsoever, and just to really start listening to people's stories. And I do this personally, you know, one-on-one. I hear a lot of stories from my immigrant clients, but I also read a lot of books and enjoy talking with people. And that, I think, is a really strong way of making connection. And it's what has helped me to do the work that I do professionally, as well as through the Freedom Team. You know, for some of you, I'm sure that you have been here much longer than my time here in Hopkinton, and I have seen a lot of changes just in my time. And I love the increased people that we are getting from diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences. Just in the last weekend, I went to the Islamic Masumin Center yesterday for their annual MLK Day interfaith celebration, and it was marvelous. So welcoming, leaders from all over, and you know, they are a huge part of our community. And some of them certainly live here in Hopkinton, and I met others who live in Upton, Attleboro, so they come into our community as well. And then yesterday evening, I was at the high school for the Hopkinton Chinese American Association celebration of the Lunar New Year. And that was, again, wonderful food, wonderful people, terrific talent. And it was just so much fun. Before the holidays, early December, the South Asian Circle of Hopkinton had their Diwali holiday celebration. And again, they were highlighting South Asian women in history and currently, and they offered talent as well and delicious food. And this is all within Hopkinton. And we never had this before. So I encourage everybody to, you know, take advantage of these offerings here, because there are so many different communities who are welcoming all of us. And there is also a lot of diversity among us. And you know, we are, as I look, and again, I don't want to make assumptions, but it's a women's club. I assume you are all identifying as women. And yet there is, I'm sure, a lot of diversity among us, and just listening to each other's stories too. And as listening to stories, then the hope is that with more empathy, with more understanding, people will be more inclusive, show more love, there will be more trust. That's what the Hopkinton Freedom Team is all about. It's the love, inclusion, and trust, or LIT. And this is all from Jamil Adams, the founder of the Freedom Team concept. As I said, Carol Kavanaugh is a member of the Freedom Team, as are a couple of the administration and teachers. And so there are a number of things that the Hopkinton Freedom Team has done with the schools, and it is still kind of percolating, or we're hopeful will happen. We have the Diversity Club at the high school. A number of those students are members of the Freedom Team. And so a number of our events have been done with the Diversity Club, such as when we were at Poly Arts and Family Day. We had the Diversity Club members and we did activities together. And so a lot of what we are doing, as I said earlier, we are listening to the students. We hear from individuals about incidents of bias that happen to them in the schools over the years, which most people probably aren't aware of at all. And so our active bystander trainings, I think we have offered those to the students. Well, we've offered them to all of you, but we also offered a two-part workshop in the fall to middle school and high schoolers that had a huge response. And I would say about 50 or 60 students in all participated in both days. And it was held at the Hopkinton Center for the Arts. And so it gives them tools to not only be an active bystander for others whom they see are having something done that's hurtful to them, or said that something that's hurtful, but also how to accept if somebody tells them that they have said something that is harmful. And we have been in discussion with the administration about holding these active bystander trainings with the administration, the staff, and the teachers. So I know that the administration is committed to this. Our viewpoint is it would be nice if we had the same kind of training available to both, so that if the teacher sees something that's happening, they have the same language and the same tools that they could assist the students with. You know, if you have a connection with someone at the school and you believe in this, please send them a note, because I think the more people who show their desire to have something like this happen, I think it would be good for them to, you know, hear that there is community support for this as well. And you know, because I think that this is one very strong way that we can empower our students, as well as the people who see them many hours each day. The other thing that the Hopkinton Freedom Team has been working on, and I think we are getting close to actually having something done, is it's like a mentor program. It's a continuation, if you will, or following the similar model that the Youth and Family Services had during the pandemic, when the students were virtual and not seeing each other. It was a program called Just Youth, and it was for students of color, and was mentored by older students and a social worker. They had a model that really worked, and so we want to bring that to the high school to start with. And again, that will be facilitated by the Youth and Family Services. and it will allow students to have a place to meet with their peers and talk about issues that are coming up for them, how they deal with them, what can they do to move ahead. And as I said, there'll be a social worker then to also monitor for any behavior that might cause some concern to self-harm or something that's not being handled well. And so that is also being led by a student. You know, her ear is to the ground. She knows what her friends and the other students are looking for. And so we're hoping that this will get off the ground this semester, before the end of the school year. Charosmitha Ram, who's also involved in the South Asian Circle of Hopkinton and the Emergency Fund of Hopkinton, so I'm sure that some of you know her. She has been interested for quite some time to have a project that she called the Origins Project. And it is essentially looking at everyone who makes up Hopkinton and finding out what their origin is. And so we've been in discussion with the Historical Society and the library, and it looks like it's going to take place as part of this new program that the library is hosting. I don't have a lot of information about it, but my understanding is it's based on a book about two families here in the U.S. who each adopt a child from Korea, if I'm not mistaken. And one set of parents are immigrants here in the U.S. and the other are white U.S. citizens who have always lived here. And so this project is asking a lot of different organizations in town to take on a specific event that they would like to do as part of this book that has one of the themes within the book. And so the Hopkinton Freedom Team is going to take on, I think, this Origins Project. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but it'll be storytelling and I think will be the first of probably a series of events. So I'm excited about that. Stressed this enough in the beginning, but the Freedom Team is really all about collaboration. We love to work with other organizations who are also interested in social justice and really making our town a better place for everybody. And because I think that we can really accomplish a lot locally. So it was not our original intent to be the primary organizer for anything. It was really just to address individual incidents of bias. But I think because there isn't another organization that does a lot of social justice events, that the community seemed to really want this kind of organization. So I wish we had more capacity to do more organizing, hence the collaboration and the support of others. There are so many ideas and there's so much that needs to be done, and putting together a land acknowledgement for our town is on our list, and the town moderator reached out to me and is interested in putting one together. So if anyone is interested in that, that's a whole other project.